All right, welcome along. This is James, and welcome to today's Working Lunch. We're going out across LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, and every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. BST, we talk to a different guest and we talk about 3 actionable strategies that you can basically put into practice in your business and help you with growing your team, growing your audience, or growing the business itself. So each session we stream live and it's available to watch on Catch Up as well. And today my guest is Dan Sodergren, who's an investor in Flock, and he's also a digital marketing guy. See him all the time on the BBC. Hi, Dan. How's it going?
Hi there, James. It's very kind of you. Yes, I do have the joy of occasionally being on the old TV and even radio and other such formats. So it's lovely to be on a much more modern way of doing things today. Yeah. So thanks for that.
Well, and it's interesting because we're seeing a lot of news reports now being done like this as well. So I think potentially moving forward, I think it's going to be interesting to see, how this changes, some of the broadcasting industry, and certainly how it's going to change work as well, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been really interesting. When I work over at the Landing, which is in Media City, so we get to be right next to a lot of the broadcasters and other folk, and of course the Landing being the tech and innovation hub for Media City, we get to see some of these things. So as I kind of teach people around digital transformation pieces, it's now been fascinating to see how quickly the world has moved ahead. I've been talking about this stuff for 10 years, and in the last 10 days, I think we've moved on more than we have in the last 10 years. So it's sadly not for the right reasons, but it's the thing that really has digitally transformed the world, I suppose.
So you've invested in your Flock, and you're kind of CIO there. So can you tell us a little bit to start off with about what you guys are doing with that particular business?
Well, it's a strange one for me because I've been in the tech world for a while, and I started a few companies, and to be fair, Flock was something that I'd tried to build with a different team about 7 years ago. Way before its time, a variety of different. I had an augmented reality company 12 years ago, so I'm kind of often ahead of the curve in some respects. So I'd look back at my own notebook, and then I bumped into Mikkel, and Mikkel was like, "Well, I built this," and I was like, "My God, I tried to build that myself." Now the irony being is, the whole thing fell apart because I couldn't get the right teams with the right values behind it to actually build the company when I first tried this thing. And that's exactly what Flock's all about. Flock is around asking employees, and certainly it's very really important in startups, but actually we're finding more important in larger companies as well, and finding out the core values of the person so they can prioritize what's important to them. Then you can then create a culture map of all your employees together, and you can kind of have an absolute feel for what's going on. And what's happening for Flock right now, because Flock is an HR, a tech startup, we're finding that people are using this more and more for remote teams. Yeah, so this new world of remote work and working from home stuff, again, I've been talking about as theoretical, or certainly I think it was like only 3% before, and now it's much higher. I've been talking about this for a very, very long time, but now it's actually happening. Now we're finding that Flock is being used for remote teams because you don't necessarily have that, how do I put it, the interpersonal play from an office management point of view that you would normally have. You don't have the office set up, you have people working remotely. And of course, some people are going to be naturally better at working remotely than others because of what they value. If you particularly value teamwork, for example, and you're not getting enough teamwork, you might feel you're isolated. So that's what Flock helps to do. Now, before, what we were using Flock for, and what people were using Flock for, ironically enough, we were helping recruiters recruit better recruiters and help their recruitment companies get more clients. Yeah,
right.
That's what it was used for. It's so good that the recruiters are using it for recruitment. But of course, when the whole coronavirus thing has hit, that side of the business is completely, it's completely transformed by itself, and we've pivoted into much more of a company culture stroke, analysing your team and team performance and productivity, which, ironically enough, it lent itself to anyway. Just the fact people hadn't used it for that.
Interesting. Okay, so one of these things is interesting. We've just had to hire 3 additional members of staff to help with increased demand in customer support and customer service. And obviously, we generally like to hire in-house, but obviously we're all remote now, so it really didn't make any difference. And how do you, to start off with, I guess let's sort of dive into this. How do we keep people engaged, and how can you kind of, I suppose, suss out that someone's going to be a good culture fit for your company if you're not sort of meeting them face to face, and if they're going to be slotting in as a kind of remote worker?
Yeah, absolutely. That's 2 or 3 questions brilliantly put together. Yeah. It's fantastic, and I'll take it apart and take a couple, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the bigger question is, how do you get people that are value add? I think we've got to go past the world of culture fit. I think we've got to go to value add. Yeah. So it's not necessarily about the culture. We've got to be careful because, of course, culture isn't isn't bean bags and ping pong tables and these things. And these are the symbols of culture. Yeah. And we've seen more and more people realize that actually they try to be acting like Google, but actually that's not really a good culture fit. So you got to look at values add. How can you get people to add value to your company? Now, your point is a brilliant one. In fact, Machine Compare, we were on a podcast yesterday with Machine Compare, big industrial, they're like industrial e-commerce site, and they're recruiting lots of people as well. And what they've used Flock to do is not only look at their own culture, they're a small team, there's like 4 or 5 of them at the moment, they're recruiting up to 10. They've used Flock to look at all of their values together, but also who would be a good value add. And also, who would be brilliant at working remotely? So, who's got high scores for autonomy if they need that, or who's got who's going to be much better fit in the development team rather than the marketing team? And that's what they use Flock for. So if we'd known James before, we could have helped you with your recruiting because if you've got like 20 candidates, you can do the Flock test, and you're like, out of all of them, this is the one. And the reason why I got so excited by Flock, the reason why I invested, in fact, I tested it first, and I tested it with my own company, but also a friend of mine's company. And if they'd listened to what Flock had said, it would have saved them literally hundreds of thousands of pounds. They didn't listen to the Flock system, and the person that they hired and recruited, who was a very high up partner in the firm, in the end left after 3 months because they weren't a culture fit, and it cost them hundreds of thousands of pounds. So that's why I invested. So I must confess, I cheated. I used it, and I liked it so much that I put money in. That's how it came about.
I think it's really interesting because we actually were faced with we put the call out to customers because we were like, okay, who's going to be great with customer success? Well, they already know the product inside out, so we're not going to have to train them up as much. We were really overwhelmed. We had over 200 responses to our initial sort of application form, and that's just from customers. That we didn't publish this job anywhere else. So we were kind of sport for choice, really. But I must admit, trying to figure out how we can kind of take that 200 and maybe move it down to sort of 50 hopefuls, and then move it down to sort of 20 people who you want to interview, and then hire sort of 2 or 3 of them. That was quite a lot of work. And as I say, we've just literally been through this process ourselves over the past sort of 3 weeks. The guys who were onboarding are starting this week, basically. So I think in terms of Flock, I guess what sort of layer would I be implementing that? Would I be putting that in right at the beginning when people are applying for jobs, or would I be putting it in sort of after they've applied and we're kind of trying to whittle down the hopefuls?
Well, again, that really depends on you. We've got people like Andy from Langham Recruitment, of course. Langham Recruitment, they use it at the very, very top. We've got other people in manufacturing that actually use it all over the show, as in like they've done a whole culture fit of the whole team, so 150 people, plus they've then done the leadership team, and then they've seen which teams work well together and which ones aren't, and they can start looking and analysing. So it's not necessarily just for startups and recruitment, it's really for much larger companies to use as well, especially if you're heading into this new world of remote work. So, but for yourselves, I'd most probably whittle it down to maybe 20 people to start off with. And then run the Flock test and say, look, the Flock is saying out of all these, this person's a good culture fit with us and a good value add. There are obviously other things you could use as well, like I'm sure you do, which is things like Bellbin, or you could use the Myers-Briggs stuff or the Insights things. There's lots of other ways of doing this remotely. Flock just happens to be the values piece underneath it, and it's self-selecting, so it's not run on an algorithm, it's not an AI process. It's someone actually saying, this is what's important to me. And that's why I feel it's really, it's actually not necessarily better than, because ENTP, which I am, my personality is an ENTP. I wish it was an ENTJ. And for you geeky people amongst you who are into psychology stuff, you'll know what I'm talking about. Little private gag for myself there. Because I'd like to change it, but I can't. And I'm most probably a red or a D, and I won't use swear words to talk about myself, but I'm most probably not the best boss in the world. I'm not too empathetic and those other things. Now, for me, that's really important information. However, that doesn't tell you my values, because my values are actually, are something that's core to me. So the Flock system is really important to get to the bottom of, and it's actually gets to the bottom of productivity as well. So what we're finding now is if you weren't engaged too much at work before, now when you go into this moment of isolation and you go into remote work, especially if it's new to you, then you're going to have a massive disconnect. And that potentially is going to cost billions of pounds. So it's around about the moment, about 62% of people feel isolated when they're working from home. Now, if you don't know that person's values on top of this, it's going to start costing your company. And it's actually going to cost your company almost more now than it did before. you've almost got to know people, but you've got to know them much better now than you used to. Because if you want to start thinking about engagement and productivity, you'll know, James, when you read things by Daniel Pink and stuff, autonomy, mastery, purpose, these are important. But actually, the values underneath it are massively important as well. So to answer your original question, it's not just about the tech tools that you use. It's about really knowing your team. It's actually the human element, which I think sometimes is missing from some of these tech tools.
Okay, that's interesting. So how can we encourage people to be productive at home? Because, from my perspective, I've really enjoyed the last sort of, I think, well, we started just a bit before lockdown began. So about a month and a bit now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've actually quite enjoyed it. I don't know if I still feel the same in another month's time because it's been different. I think the things I've noticed, we have had to focus more on communication because it's not as kind of natural. You can't sort of bounce ideas around like you would when you're sort of face to face. So everything's got to be a lot more structured, and we've got to have endless calls like this one.
Absolutely.
Sort of keep in touch. But I think overall, we're quite lucky, and we've got a really solid team. We've got a great culture. I hope anyway, and everyone seems to be sort of continuing as usual.
Well,
So what's the top tips then to keep people motivated, do you think?
Well, you covered one of them brilliantly, and it's great that you've got a strong team. And it's not to think that you don't. I'd always use that for data, though, isn't it? Because every boss I know, including myself, by the way, I've had companies where I said we've got a great culture, and then I've come back and 4 people have left, and I'm like, wow, surely they were really happy. And actually, they weren't really happy at all. This is the reason why I invested into Flock, because I'm not emotionally intelligent enough to realise the situation, and that's the reason why I'm scratching my own itch, etc. So, but the great thing about it, use Flock anyway. Use Flock and see how aligned you all are, because it's not a misjudgment on things. It's not saying this person's good, this person's bad. It's just saying how aligned are you, how cohesive are you, and where could you potentially help one person who's finding remote work quite difficult? Well, you wouldn't know. Most people, if you say to them, "Oh, if your boss says to you, are you finding remote work hard?" You're going to say, "No, I'm fine." Some people will, yeah. Now, if you find out the values and you find out they really value teamwork a lot, you need to phone them a bit more. It's the basic thing. So to come on to answer your question, one of the things you put there, which is brilliant, which is about honest communication, transparency. That is one of the key things that you've got to do in this kind of new world. And that's what lots of good bosses are doing. But a lot of bosses, certainly middle management bosses as well, find this tricky. So certainly a lot of entrepreneurs when they first start, because they think they're oversharing. In this kind of new world, especially in the next couple of months, it's almost impossible to overshare. Yeah. Have very honest and very transparent communication, even if you're thinking you're giving away stuff too much. And also speed is really important. We're in this kind of heightened time where actually quickness is really important. So Slack and email and these things are great. Now, I'm going to slightly contradict myself here, but be careful of doing too many Zoom meetings. Okay. Yes. Because of this this big thing about psychological disconnect. Yeah. And what happens, this is where you get your Zoom dooms. This is where you get when you just basically at the end of the day, you're just tired. And you're like, I had 5 Zoom calls today. Why am I so tired? Yeah. Well, actually, it's to do with how much your brain processing stuff at the same time, but it also knows you're not there. So it's trying to make up the fact you are there at the same time. It's a very draining process. And we don't realize this because but I've been using Zoom for many, many years. And you can't if you're doing a 2-hour Zoom call, stop. Yeah. Because that's horrible on everyone. Yeah, that's most probably why they cut it off at 40 minutes, because they know actually, that's about, 17, 20, 30 minutes tops anyway. But you'd be amazed how many people are doing Zoom calls. And one of my other bosses at the landing, I'm not going to say the company, they did a 5-hour Zoom call with 16 people in it. Yeah, and that's horrid. That's a horrible meeting. That's, it doesn't matter how important the world is.
Agree. It becomes like sometimes as well, if I've noticed this, smaller meetings with fewer people, once you get past sort of 4 or 5 in a single call, if everyone's talking, it just becomes a bit of a shouting, that can become a bit of a shouting match, and it's just quite hard for people to speak, and it becomes even more for your brain to process then, because it's
there's so much stuff going on. And I think that's another thing. I wrote a blog about this a bit ago with MPA, but there's a couple of things that we've got to start doing in Zoom meetings that we didn't do before. So, for example, you've got a brilliant backdrop, you've got really nice lighting, the volumes are right, and all the rest of it. So, awesome. However, you'll be amazed how many people, are doing Zoom call, with the camera angles in the wrong places and too close and too loud and these things. And that just freaks people out psychologically, and it makes it a much more draining process than it needs to be. But that's a subject for a different thing. So I'd say, speed's really important. Don't do too many Zoom calls, but do communicate, and actually do lots of things that we were doing as tech teams before. And if you're not a tech team, then you might not do your standing up scrums and all these other things. But actually start doing that. Start using Kanban, start using Trello. Start looking at some of the more techie and geeky things out there. So, use a Loom instead of doing a Zoom meeting of trying to explain something. Just do a tiny video. Do a tiny video on Loom. I know all these things start sounding very similar, Zoom, Doom, whatever. But there you go. They're all similar things, yeah. But there's quite a few. But then there's other things like Trello and Notion and Kanban systems, yeah. Now, you must already use these already, and maybe lots of people on the call do. But a lot of people that are new to remote working haven't used these things online. They haven't started set things out like I've done, and and they don't have these systems in place because they're used to just chatting in the corridor or talking around the water cooler, or you start. I've done digital transformation stories for a long, long time, and I'm amazed how many people I turn up to and I say, "Look, do you have KPIs and OKRs?" And they say, "Well, what's an OKR? You just made it up." And I'm like, "No, I haven't." Now, those things, ironically, for some people at the moment, might be really useful to have because they don't have you as the manager. And they don't have you smiling or not smiling all the time about, or meeting and bumping into them and saying, "Oh, what should I be up to? I should be up to them." So that, right. So the other thing I'd say, and it's quite important, use your Zoom stuff for not just formal meetings. I'm sure you guys do this already, but have your virtual coffee things. Have the bits where you can dip in and dip out like you would do when you just met and had a drink, because it's really important. Human beings need that connection, and that's how you get more people to be more productive. Sorry.
So and that helps to build a culture. We've been doing that on Friday afternoons, like quite often. Friday afternoons, a few of us will go to the pub for a beer. We've been doing a virtual beer on a Friday afternoon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it certainly helps, doesn't it?
And it's golden, and it's golden. Of course, I'm not here to kind of promote a drinking culture, nor am I to dismiss it. By the way, I'm a great believer in the Friday afternoon drink, but of course, it doesn't have to be. It could be coffee and other things. And the other things that we're finding as well is if you start tapping into that, like things like the weekly wins and other things that you could do. It might sound a bit cheesy and it might sound like you're overdoing stuff, but actually, when everyone's working remotely, even the small wins are really important. And we've got to remind ourselves, we're not working from home. We're actually in a global pandemic where we're forced to do something that we don't normally do. Now, I'm very lucky. I've been a remote worker without knowing the word remote working for a very long time. So I've been quite lucky to be quite productive, but I haven't needed bosses and other things. Now, the nice thing about this, though, is that the flock system will then point out who might need a bit more help. Now, I might be flourishing working from home, and I love autonomy, and I don't really mind not very much teamwork, and I'm customer focused and data driven. That's great. However, not everyone's like me, and therefore that's the reason why the more you can use something, the more data you've got, James. I'll be honest with you, especially at a time when we're kind of slightly impersonally blind because we can't see what other people are up to. The happier that everyone will be, and I'll leave you on. Well, not leave you, but I'll just discuss one more step because it's a really good one that Mikkel we use at Flock as well, which is if you want people to be more productive, and we do, want more to be more engaged, start defining what success is for that day. And again, it feels almost micromanaging and overplaying it, but literally in your own head, think about what it is for that day. And I know it sounds obvious. You'd be like, "Oh, we only do these things every month." But actually, you've got to really do it in a real small time frame now. Because everyone's so heightened emotionally, you have to get that quick reward mechanism in a bit more. So it literally is, what's going to be successful today? What are the 3 things you're going to do? And actually, as soon as you've done those 3 things, just, chill out, man. Life's hard enough. If you've achieved what you need to achieve for that day, maybe start looking at your life-work balance a bit more as well. And, go out into the sunshine and do the things with your family and other things. Obviously, only do your 1 piece of state-regulated exercise per day and do social distancing, as we know. But I think what we've got to do is start to realise together that as soon as you start hitting your objectives at work and you start being more productive, you can start being not overproductive, but you can start burning out if you're by yourself. So, be careful of your mental health as well as the workplace.
I think that's good advice. Okay. And so sort of, what do you think the future of work proposition looks like then, sort of to finish up this conversation? And just before we continue with that, actually, if anyone's got any questions for Dan or myself, please put them in the comments. We're going to hopefully do a bit of a Q&A at the end. Future of work proposition. How do you think this is going to change? And do you think this is going to change everything? Or do you think people are just going to go back to what it was like before?
That is such a great and massive question. It's like, so Dan, you're a Buddhist. Religion, discuss which is the true God and what will happen in the next 1,000 years. Interesting. It's an epoch. Well, it's Piscean epoch. The next one's going to be Aquarius. So let's find out. It's a big question, but it's one I'm happy to answer. So for a while I've been talking about the future of work stuff, and I've been talking around that proposition. And one of the parts of it was going to be, we're going to be doing more remote work. Now, of course, because of this situation, that's instantly been thrust upon us. Yeah. But there are other parts of the future worker which not necessarily been thrust upon us yet. But one of the things will be data feedback loops. Yeah. And also about health. Health is going to become more and more important because actually that's the underlying driver to productivity. Yeah. If you are ill, if you don't feel well, then you will not be performing well at work. And this is mental health as well as physical health. They're both really important. And I think we haven't for a long time understood that as the past worker. I think the future worker will start looking at that much more and more and more, especially if we're not using offices as much as we used to. So there's literally 3 or 4 parts to it, but I'll give you a couple. Not give the whole game away, but I'll give you. Of course, remote work is going to be part of it. But another one would be things like, and I hate to use the word artificial intelligence too much because there's, I work in tech, so as soon as you start using that word, people start telling you off. But the reality is,
around a lot.
It gets thrown around a lot, exactly. The old joke being that, that's on the PowerPoint, and actually machine learning is the thing you actually really do. But there you go. Massive, geeky, unnecessary joke to say. And the rest is done in Python. Anyway, it's not as funny as I thought it would be, but there you go. I still think it's funny.
It's funny to me.
Thank you. Hooray. There you go.
I don't have any.
It's an unnecessary gag. I do it in my live talks. I do it, but it doesn't work because there's not like 40 people, 50 people in the room. So it's not, and even then, only about 2 people laugh anyway. It's just the techie people that laugh at it. So exactly. It's a little in gag.
Yeah,
it's an in gag. But anyway, go back to your great point, which is so the future of work will be around utilizing some of this technology. So AI will be part of it, but actually you'll be augmented by AI. A lot of people think that AI is going to replace what people do. I don't believe that at all. I think it's just going to add value. So you're going to start doing stuff. It's really odd because the whole coronavirus thing really has accelerated all this. You're going to start using lots more programs and SaaS companies and other things to do the stuff that you normally thought you'd have to do yourself. So things like meetings being placed by AI bots, and people using chat bots and other things on websites. All these things will become more and more prevalent. But if you are the worker there, your ability is being enhanced by AI. It's not being replaced, if that makes sense. Yeah. So you might become a better whatever it is because of AI. Now, I think it would be the exact same with robotics. You'll become a better whatever it is, but because of robots. They'll make you better
bot because of AI.
Yeah, even better. Well, no, but if you see things like utilizing, like how China's utilizing 5G and utilize those things. So actually, instead of you being a crane driver in one place, you're then a crane person operator, but you can operate 5 cranes at once.
Yeah.
But that uses 5G, but it also uses AI behind it as well. Because it's impossible to do just as one person, but you've got all these screens up at the same time and you are doing this. And it's actually quite clever because you're taking someone out of a very dangerous environment and bringing them to a less dangerous environment and letting the computers do the dangerous bit, but it still needs the ability of the human being, because that's the core bit, that human bit. Now, I think that's a great metaphor for a lot of this stuff in the future. We'll be more productive. It's a little like being an accountant and having Excel. Yeah. Nowadays, we wouldn't look at it. We'd be like, well, of course they use Excel. But in the very near future, we'll be like, well, of course we use AI to help us because we couldn't compute all that data.
Yes.
And a lot of companies are using AI without even realizing it. So that'd be one point. Another one will be, I think remote working will go beyond the fad. Will people? It's a really interesting point you say. Will people go back to? I really hope that this is a tipping point for so many things that I've been talking about for a long time. I really do, because there's a huge amount of waste in companies at the moment because people aren't engaged at work. Yeah, it's something like 34% of people aren't engaged. The UK population aren't engaged at work, and that costs like billions of pounds. That's in lost ability, and it's normally because of poor recruitment decisions, but also in employee disengagement. Yeah. So in the future of work, what we might find is that you work. It's almost like you work less. You work less hours. Yeah, but you enjoy your work more. And I think what we're going to find is a lot more things like job sharing, a load more things like job sharing, and a load more things, load more ability from working remotely, but then engage. It's almost like the office will become like the market days of old. Like you'll go into the office, but only one day a week.
Yeah.
So you'll do your work and you'll bring it in and you'll say, this is what I've done. And everyone will go, oh, well done. Let's all go for a beer. Fantastic. Let's put it all together.
So the office becomes more specifically just as a place of collaboration versus, somewhere you actually need to sit and actually get on with it. It's more like a kind of just treated like a meeting room, almost like a communal hall.
Exactly that, like the Commons. So it's actually the opposite to the way that we're doing stuff at the moment. Like everyone goes home and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, now I can relax and and then you go back into the office and it's a high tension place. But actually, it might be the opposite. You might really enjoy going to the office once a week because you haven't seen the people for ages. So you then go back and you connect with people and you can talk about it. Now, don't get me wrong. I work with the landing. The landing is a place, and you cannot, believe me, in tech and other things, you cannot get rid of the power of human interaction and collaboration.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Absolutely. I'm not saying the future is all remote work. It can, and if it is, we're going to be in a very dark place. For reasons that unfortunately might become apparent and might unfurl. And hopefully we have the technology and we will have the technology and science to stop that from happening. If it doesn't, we're in a very dark place. I'm hoping though we don't lose some of the positives. So doing a 2-hour commute every day to sit on a laptop next to someone you don't necessarily enjoy the company with all the time, and basically almost destroying the environment to do so seems rather silly when we have, like literally behind me there. Oh, no, there. Where is it gone? The little white box behind me. Just seen it. That's a 4G and a 5G router that's just behind me. Huawei's one, done by Vodafone. GigaCube allows me to do my job here with great connectivity. Nowhere near as good as at the landing because we have huge amounts of fiber and huge amounts of 5G connectivity. However, perfectly acceptable for remote work. So the old argument that you can't do your work from home actually might be about 60% of us. Actually, we can do our work from home. It seems to be I don't know where you guys are working from and how you did it, but it was almost, certainly in the larger companies I've worked for, it almost became like a badge of honor that you were allowed to work from home. Whereas other people were like, oh, you're working from home. Okay, it became a kind of, you were slacking off. And if you were the boss, you're allowed to work from home because you're the boss or you're high up. So it became the kind of like, it's almost a status of the corner office. You're working from home because it was almost the echelon of having the corner office and being the boss. Now we're all allowed to start working from home. I hope we keep that democratization, and I hope we keep the life-work balance. However, that's a kind of hippie dream and technologist hippie dream rather than what I think will happen.
I think it's really interesting. I certainly think from our perspective, me as a founder, I've drawn a lot of, I've always liked having an office, and I'm completely with you. I think, having that human interaction, bouncing ideas around is really good. Some great things have come out of that. Sometimes it can also be a distraction because sometimes, you want to get on with something and actually, you've got people talking to you, there's other stuff or people are talking to each other and sometimes it can be distracting. So actually, I think sometimes having that kind of peace and quiet at home is really good. There's no distractions there. I think as a company, we've traditionally, although, people can work from home if they need to, it's never really been, I'd say, like actively kind of encouraged as much. It's just a case of if someone needs to work from home because they've got, kids to look after or delivery coming or something like that, they just do that. So I think we'll probably be thinking, certainly, it's made me think, well, what can we do to sort of implement this on an ongoing way? Because actually, it's been fine. We uproot. We're very lucky because everything we do is cloud-based, as a lot of tech companies are. And we just cracked on the following day with really little sort of changes being needed to be made in order to us unable to do that. Whereas obviously there are other companies that completely, they're still really running on Exchange servers based at the office or whatever, and they really struggled to move to a sort of to a work from home environment. But there we go. So I think there's lots of interesting points you've raised there, Dan, and let's take some questions. So. If anyone's got any questions, by the way, please put them in the comments. They'll be fed to us. We're going to be just having a little bit of a discussion now. So let's start off with, this is from Naomi. She asks, do we think that D&I think that means diverse and inclusive, has been sidelined, conveniently forgotten in terms of recruiting at this time?
That's a real big one, and I think fair play, Naomi, because I think that's exactly what will happen, or has started to happen. Now, I am a massive geek when it comes to data, so I don't have the data for it. I have an opinion, but it's just an opinion, But I'm a great believer in it. Data is really important. In fact, you should make most valued decisions to be made on data alone, not just opinion. My opinion, however, is that in the panic, I suppose, or certainly the problem that we've got now is that it could be one of the things that people start to go, oh well, don't worry about that too much. However, I think it's the exact opposite, certainly for tech, and I've got to be again careful we're talking out of line, because most of the stuff I do is in tech. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a well-known fact with data behind it that the more diverse teams you have, and diversity inclusion, including neurodiversity, by the way, it's not about race, it's not about age, it's not about sex, it's the whole gamut of diversity is tremendously important. Because if you don't have that, then the software and the other things you create just simply aren't as good. You also don't get as much investment, nor do you make as much money. It's just a simple thing. Now, the great thing, though, will be because of remote working, it should mean that you can become more diverse rather than less diverse, because you don't have to come into the office. You don't have to do this next bit. You don't have to do this next bit. So actually, in recruitment, and I have to be careful with words because we love recruiters at Flock, we really do, but they're not necessarily themselves the most diverse people, and I love the fact that in Manchester we're actually very, very good in Manchester. Believe me, I started to look in other places around the world and around the country, and they're not necessarily as D&I positive. We have a great community here with people like Amy Newton and other people that have been championing it for a very long time. So it's a fair play to them, and right. So I really hope that the remote work and the technologies we can now use actually will spin this almost on its head. You can become much more diverse. You can become much more inclusive. But you have to have a recruitment sector that is behind that drive 100% as well. And I'm hoping that we start putting things in place. One of the reasons for Flock as well is that you look at people's values. We should be recruiting on values and not hard skills necessarily, but the soft skills and the values of the person, not the fact and not how old they are or what color they are or what their name's like. And I'm afraid there's so much unconscious bias that happens in the recruitment process. It's a wonderful question, though, Naomi. I'm loving that question. I hope that answered it a bit. I'm 100% behind it. I mean, not surprising. I've vested interest, being quite brown and old, and old. So I've vested interest that we get more diverse and inclusive.
I think as well, one thing to point out, which may come with this, is the ability to hire people who aren't necessarily, there's been this problem, obviously, with one of the reasons the BBC moved from London to Manchester was because, everyone they were hiring was really from London or the home counties, and excluded a lot of people in different areas. Whereas if this becomes sort of more normal for many companies, it's going to make hiring people in different areas of the country or even different countries much easier. So, like, for example, 2 of the people we have just taken on are not in the UK. And generally speaking, most of our team is, so it's a fantastic opportunity and ability to do that because of what's going on.
And it changes everything. It changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. Whereas, before, we'd have probably automatically just started looking in the local area to hire those people. So immediately, it's kind of pushing us to sort of look further afield.
It allows you to do something which is great, which it allows you to then tap into most probably a higher, not necessarily a higher ability, because that doesn't mean to. Yeah, as you say, but if you're only hiring within like a 10-mile radius or a 20-mile radius, because that's the nature of how you've always done it, and it's always one of the biggest problems with tech companies can be, I know someone who's good. All right, cool, he's like me, I like them, therefore we hired them. And that's what creates this bubble, unfortunately, in tech sometimes, because so-and-so knows so-and-so who knows so-and-so. But that's actually a very small radius of people, but as soon as you start widening it from not being 20 miles radius to actually the globe, it's astounding what we can possibly do. And that's a much bigger conversation. But I'm not going to touch that with a barge pole, but certainly global hiring will be fascinating.
Cool. Okay. A couple of comments from Russell Hope. He says, I've heard video call can cheat your brain into thinking you're having human interaction. And also, he says, Trello is great for managing shopping lists too, so we don't all have to go to the supermarket and queue for 2 hours. I think that's a fair comment to make.
That is a very fair comment to make. And I think he must have seen my phone and other things, so that's a bit spooky. But I mean, Christ, just use it for everything. I use it for project managing and homeschooling and all sorts of stuff. There you go. It's a very, very good tool. So is Notion, by the way. So there you go. So yeah, I think there's it's a really good point. You can use it for almost anything you want. What was Russell's question?
Sorry, that was the actual question was video calls. Can they trick your brain or cheat your brain into thinking you're having human interaction? What do you think?
Yes, because that's the psychological brain synapse, the electrical impulses that you can register. Yeah, but I think because I am a bit of a hippie and a humanist, I don't think you can ever get away in the recruitment process. I think you can. I think you absolutely can get away from because you can see a myriad of different things in a video call, just like you can now. There's a myriad of different things. So video is better than just a normal telephone call, which is obviously, a text message is even worse and email is even worse. So there are ranked ways of communicating. But I think there is something I don't know it because I'm getting no data around it, but there's something about energy levels and other things that you can pick up on. I personally have a massive issue with the interview process. I think it's a fundamentally flawed way of doing stuff because, everyone can show off for an hour, or 2 hours or whatever. It has to be more data driven than just, were you good? Because I've hired far too many people that were great at interview and then not good later on. And sometimes that's my problem because of a weak onboarding process. I'll admit that as well. Hands up. Even maybe in a bad culture. But in reality, you've got to do a lot more digging around personality and around the soft side of someone than just letting them show off for an hour. I think if you're doing it through video call, I think it'll be fascinating to see. I think it's a really good way of recruiting people. I think that bit of technology. That's one point, James. I'll be honest with you. That's one thing I don't think that's ever going to go back in the box. I think people will be doing so many more video calls and so many more video calls recruiting people. But again, I would say please use data as well. But don't let that data be crawling through their social media because that comes up with very, very weird things sometimes. And also, I think it might be illegal, or it certainly is illegal in Germany. But be careful of AI bots that scrape and predict people's personality types through social media because I've done that and that doesn't work. It can very good.
Cool. Okay. Which industries do you think are going to be the most changed after COVID-19? What do we think is going to change the most? I mean, it's quite an interesting question, quite a big one again.
I love it, man. Goodness gracious. I'm going to throw it back to you, James. No, I'm just being naughty by letting myself not answer it. There's a couple that I think fundamentally, but actually there's some deeper ones. There's ones around manufacturing, and with Flock we use a lot of manufacturers use Flock, and that's really cool. We're really happy to help a lot of health manufacturers. We're happy to do that because they're doing cool and funky stuff. I think it's going to change and accelerate that industry 4.0. And I know it's a buzzword, but we've been using it for a bit. But we're going to have to get much better, certainly in health tech, around manufacturing and a much more smart and agile approach. And that one of the things will be either COVID-19 will basically pull apart globalization as we know it, and everyone become more isolated, which is a fear of mine. If I'm honest, I'd rather we went to the funky place where we all realise we're all in it together, and I think that would be awesome. But of course, politicians, other people might say, no, we need to be able to manufacture our own stuff, and it might completely change things like food manufacturing, for example. So actually, it might completely change agri-tech businesses, and we might be growing things on the side of skyscrapers, which I think would be awesome because that would be great for food production. Now, but that's a wish. Again, that's another green hippie wish for that to happen. However, things like smart cities and data collection, I mean, there's absolutely no way right now, and this is, again, fascinating subject, in health tech, there will be a billion, trillion dollar revolution. It's happening right now because people have suddenly gone, oh my God, health's important. Now, we should have known that before. Health's always been important. But now we're literally going, okay, shouldn't everyone have an app on their phone that helps them with their health? And shouldn't we be able to track them? Now, they did that in South Korea, and it's changed how they dealt with the crisis. Same with China and with 5G. Germany did it a different way, and we've done it a different way. Now, the thing is, we've got the data now, and we can say which one worked out, which one didn't. At the moment, we can kind of say that, and you've seen the graphs and things, right?
Yeah.
So in health tech, though, it gets a lot deeper. So it's biomechanics, it's, all this other stuff, metric data, all this stuff. There's so much money there, so much opportunity there to make the world a better place. So I'm hoping that what this makes lots of people do is look at it and go, we can try to make the world a better place, not just because of health tech and not just around health data, but actually in general. So should we be building cities the way we build them? And all this actually spins out of the hardship that's happening here. I mean, there's a bit of a geeky joke, but who led the digital transformation in the world? Well, was it the CEO, the CTO, the CIO, or was it COVID? Well, actually, the answer is COVID. It's completely changed how we're looking at everything. So, agri-tech, definitely. Health tech, definitely. Smart cities, yes. Manufacturing, yes. Is there going to be? I mean, education technology. How many kids at the moment? There's 1.5 billion people kids that aren't being schooled, but they're being schooled online. I mean, that's insane. I imagine isn't Zoom now worth like more than all the airlines combined in America? I mean, it's that crazy. Even people looking at car manufacturing, they're looking at it and going, well, there's no point in doing car manufacturing as much anymore. I mean, it's only, how long's it been? 3, 4? I mean, I was in isolation before, so maybe it's not been 3 months, but it hasn't been very long. but the massive changes are actually total for the world. That gave you at least 3 minutes there, James, a filler, while you thought of your answer as well. There you go. What do you think?
I can't even. So it's. I need to remind myself of the question, to be honest.
Which industries are going to change the most?
Oh, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, obviously, I think most industries are potentially who weren't using tech before are now using tech, which is a good thing, right? It's good for our industry, being people in tech, I guess. I mean, obviously, I don't know what's going to happen with events, for example, events industry. How long is that going to take to get back to normal? Are people actually now really going to be doing more networking via the computer? So rather than actually going to networking events, there's obviously lots of online conferences going on at the moment, that sort of thing. I don't know. It's sort of, again, same with entertainment. I think one of the things we've noticed with radio.co is there's been a huge spike in traffic of people listening to radio stations. We're also seeing more customers coming on board. But the difference is people want to listen. They're having that human connection versus just listening to Spotify playlists. So, I think it's kind of doing some favors for the entertainment industry. And obviously people are relying on entertainment a lot during this time. Anyway,
podcasts will get bigger and bigger. Let's be fair.
Yeah,
but I suppose it's whether that continues and whether it really changes. And I think there's some other psychological kind of stats around stuff. But I think it can take 21 days to create a new habit. Yeah, okay, it's a couple of months, and it'd be interesting to see if those habits stick. So Netflix is not going to disappear, but people aren't going to necessarily watch the TV because that's demographic changes. But things like remote working and commuting to work, I think a lot of people have realised that their commute was pretty horrid, and they're like, actually, did I really need to do that all the time? Now that's a hard one to go back to the office and then go, oh, by the way, I'm happy to do a 2-hour commute every day, because actually, I bet after a bit you're like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. So I think it's going to be the most interesting thing will be around the office space and how it's utilised. And I hope we don't get rid of offices completely, because I think actually human beings must probably need them.
Yes, I agree. Right, okay, so one question to finish up with. This is from Cameron. Any good ways of identifying employees who might be struggling during lockdown? A lot of the signs not necessarily visible compared to when you're sort of face-to-face working.
Oh, that's just, well, thank you very much, Cameron, for the lovely segue into Flock and why it actually exists. So that was very kind of you. But that's exactly why Flock exists. So you send out the Flock report. I mean, I think we were saying that for anyone who's listening on the call, we can do 25 for free. It's not normally that high, but we'll do 25. If you're listening today, we'll do 25 for free. Sign up your people there. Let them do the survey. It takes 10 minutes to do the survey.
How many questions is it?
That depends on how they've answered and how exactly, and the system behind it. But you're ranking your values basically. You rank all your values, and then the system then works out your spider diagram. And then if you do it with enough people, and this is why I would say use the 25. Do it with enough if you've got enough people there. Okay, use it for the number you've got, and then you can create your culture map. Now, then go into individually, and you can say, okay, if autonomy is really important, that's likely, and the system will infer for you what the managerial style might need to be. Yeah, that's exactly why Flock exists. We're very lucky because it's just coincided with this time, and actually now people are much more looking at going, oh my god, we really do need to use this, because actually it's a good tool to use. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's definitely not the only one in the marketplace. It's definitely not, but also I would back it up with other stuff. So definitely back it up. If you haven't done your 16 personalities test, that's gold anyway, and it only takes like 10 minutes as well. And it's a really, really interesting thing to do. Same again with insights, but it costs quite a lot. It can cost quite a lot, should I say. Disc profile, I'm sure you've all done, and then Belbin. But as I say, Flock would tie into the remote work thing a lot more actually than those ones there. So Cameron, find me, Dan Sodergren, Sodergr, and GN, and find me on LinkedIn, and I'll send it to you, Cameron. So Dan, and I'm happy to do it.
And I'm going to try. We need to try this with my guys as well. Like, I think it sounds really interesting. I think that's the one thing I'm good for. And also, you've done a really good job of selling it as well today, Dan.
I'm not a sales. It must sell itself. I'm not a sales guy even slightly. Bless me. That is definitely not my personality.
Just to finish up then. So what's the website's use Flock, isn't it?
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So I shouldn't see that proves. See, terrible salesperson. Didn't even mention the website. There you go. So the website is www.yourflock.co.uk. But as I say, yourflock.co.uk. As I say, find us also on LinkedIn as well, and certainly find myself, Dan Sodergren, Sodergren, on LinkedIn. Very easy to do because there's very few Sodergrens that are massive with dreadlocks. And black like I am, so that's easy to do. And then just LinkedIn message. We're a pretty cool laid back company, so I'll ping it across to you. You'll do it, and then I'll get some clever folk as well behind the scenes, and my tech team and other people will then interact with you and help you as much as we possibly can. Not just James, but anyone who's who's listening today. So thanks very much for your time.
All right, Dan. Thanks for coming on today. It's been really, really interesting.
No problem. Thank you very much. Thanks for doing it.
Cool, and that's